back in the Wood Couture podcast for another part of today's world exclusive interview with both co-founder of ENVI Lodges, Nader and Noelle Homsy. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you, Filippo.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have them. And now we're going to hear from their mouth, from their inspirations, and all about ENVI Lodges. So to start, now I leave it open, who wants to answer. Ladies first, let's try. And ENVI Lodges, where this idea came from?
Wow. I expected this question, actually. So personally, I don't know about Chris, he has a different story. Personally, I've been thinking about, ever since I was in architecture, I wanted to be in hospitality, and I've already mentioned that. And then throughout my travels in Asia, I visited some eco-lodges that are run by locals. And I realized that there's more to preserve than what architecture can do, as in preserving historical buildings. And there's more to preserve in nature, particularly in culture and in people, in society. And Chris and I had some experience in with interacting with eco-lodges here in the region. And I think the idea came together where we said, there's a big gap, there's a big need here in the market. Eco-lodges or experiential lodges, if you want, all started in Africa with the safari camps. And it gave people the opportunity or the chance to be out in the wild, to be close to animals and see them. But there's more to see than just animals in nature. And these experiences can be replicated elsewhere. And they have. The experiential lodges grew in South America, in North America, in Asia. And there's a lot of potential to bring experiential eco-lodges to the Middle East, to the MENA region. And this is what we're doing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Chris, Noelle in a recent interview, she mentioned that the regional hospitality need to evolve to stay relevant. What is missing in the ecosystem of the hospitality?
There are many things that are missing. The problem is that if you're talking about this region, a lot of the hospitality offering and the tourism offering has emerged in the last 10, 15 years.
Right.
And it's a very short period of time. And when you see many, many opportunities that a certain environment, country or region offers, there are so many things to think about. And probably people can't focus on all those gaps in the market at the same time. So obviously the first priority was to say, we need hotels. Let's build hotels. We need towers. We need to develop this region, glass, concrete, density. It started with 200 rooms, 3, 4, 5. We have hotels here that are 1,800 rooms and more. There's a 1 kilometer radius in Dubai with close to 5,000 rooms with maybe 2 operators. So we went into this huge and fast development to put some markets in the region on the map. The first one that put everything on the map is probably Burj Al Arab, and still is one of the most iconic hotels in the world. Dubai upped their game with Burj Khalifa that has a hotel there, and it kept being about bigger, 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 and better, and breaking world records. And this is what tourism authorities need to put certain country on the map. Once you finish this phase, and I was during this phase, I was developing hotels during this phase, and all my hotels were 200, 300, 400 rooms. You have to stop and think, okay, now that we did that, what's next? What's missing? The city has fully developed. What is there to offer so that this market, this region, or this country remains competitive on the tourism scene? And each country in this region and each city even has around it some unbelievable natural beauty that was not exploited before, simply because the focus was somewhere else, rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the shifts that are happening in the industry, when you look at what people are really looking for today, what they care about, and obviously the pandemic has accelerated the need for these types of new experiences, being very responsible when you travel and looking at different types of hospitality offering. I think ENVI came at the right time to capitalize on this gap and looking at some of the amazing natural landscapes that exist around the region, and to basically try to say, how can we capitalize on such natural beauty, on such land, while being responsible? And the most difficult part in all of that is the being responsible part.
Right.
Because, as you know, investors and developers have a tendency to overbuild, because it's all about return per square meter. What's my return on investment per square meter? And what we're doing is obviously the opposite of that, is how to minimize square meter, but still within what you're offering, what you're developing, have a product that generates very, very high room rate and therefore very good returns. So finding that balance between responsible development, responsible tourism, and investment is a challenge, but this is what we wanted really to solve in this region.
Before diving deeper into the DNA of ENVI Lodges, the question I have for both of you, you say responsible, being responsible, so I'm linking that to sustainability and that. Has the hospitality industry progressed this topic aggressively, or is it still up in the air? What's your views on how hospitality is coping with sustainability in general?
I think everyone is trying to do their best at the moment to cope with it, and they're only trying to do their best recently, and probably most of them woke up during the pandemic or even after the pandemic, but they are doing their best, and we have to thank them, we have to support them, and we have to show appreciation to all these big groups that are trying to change. And you know, when you're a huge group, it's very difficult to change. We have some of the big groups that appointed chief sustainability officers that have a remarkable experience and track record and a great name. And I'm sure, you know, these groups will do great in that. But it's not only about the operator, about the brand, it's about also the investors.
Right.
Are investors ready to put their money into renewable energy, into sourcing sustainable materials, into making sure that a project is hitting all those standards that are needed to become sustainable? And I don't think they're ready yet, and I don't think they're doing it to the level that it needs to be done. I think some have just started touching the surface. Obviously, I'm not referring to eco lodges in Africa or Southeast Asia. I'm talking about more the kind of urban developments. We just started to touch the surface of it, and it's such a huge topic, you know, when it comes to supply chain and sourcing the materials and getting stuff on site, and then looking at governance and looking at social equality and how you treat your employee. It's a huge topic, and we have to be careful about greenwashing. We have to be careful about who's genuinely doing something and who's just trying to surf the wave at the moment. It's tough to be genuine about all those layers, and I think each one of us has to do their best within what they're given.
And the same topic, is education, or the institutions of education that teach the future hospitality practitioner doing enough to push and educate people about sustainability?
I think just as the wave is starting now with the operators, a bit slower with the investors and the owners, it's also starting in the education sector. And this is very important, because 5 years, 10 years from now, these are the people who are going to be building the next generation of hotels, the next generation of buildings in whatever sector. And I think they're starting well because education always has to be one step ahead of the market. Educational institutions have to think in 5-10 years from now, what will be the need? Who do we want to be out there building the industry? And it's also important to learn from other industries, not to compete or benchmark ourselves against other hotels in the region. It's important to look at other regions, and it's important to look and learn from other industries. What is the, for example, retail sector or the FMCG sector doing to minimize their carbon footprint? There are lots of learnings, lots of lessons that we can use, and we say cross-pollinate ideas across sectors and across industries to bring the best value we can to the hotel and hospitality sector here in the region.
Out of curiosity, because the people from home, they know you from your corporate lives. How did you choose each other? How did you end up saying, yeah, Chris is my perfect business partner, and Chris, how is Noelle?
Can I ask Chris first?
Yeah, please. How did you choose Noelle to be your business partner?
White
whatever venture was.
White is her favorite color. Black is my favorite color. So I thought opposites attract each other. I think, Noelle touched on something very important, which is getting inspired by other industries and other businesses. And for me, it was always looking at people that are a bit different from me, that have a different background and complement me differently. If you look at Noelle's profile on LinkedIn, someone would say, wow, she's done a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of that, and I can't see where she can fit in the hospitality industry, because the industry is a bit conservative. You know, you have to start as a busboy and make it up all the way up to GM
way.
to become respected in the industry. And unfortunately, this has its pros, but it also has its cons, because the industry is known to be a very not very innovative, not very forward-looking, and it just follows trend instead of being a trendsetter. So the only way we can change that is that by bringing people from other backgrounds and other industries. I myself am not also a hotelier by profession. I was born in a family of hospitality profession. I did a lot of experience in F&B in different areas, but I don't consider myself a hotelier. So both of us don't come from that typical background, but it doesn't mean that we're similar. We're actually quite different. And I think for me it was extremely interesting to join forces with Noelle to be able to bring something new to the industry.
Wow. So the answer is you the pillar of the two. So why Chris?
Add to that, yeah, actually, why Chris? Chris made a good point that we're not at all the same when it comes to experience and background, but the reason why I chose Chris is because I felt we shared the same values, we shared the same vision, we understood the market the same way and from the same perspective. So actually I found in him someone who's thinking like me. He came from a different side of it, but then we met at the same, problem to solve it together. And we've actually worked together for a few years, Chris and I. So, and as you know, in startups, there's a big weight that is put on the founders and how well they work together, because one of the biggest reasons for failures of startups is founders not agreeing at some point in their journey. It's more important than the idea, it's more important than the team that they recruit, and more important than the market, the need for the solution. And this already, the fact that we've worked together and we're compatible in a business setting, it already eliminates a big chunk of potential failure, let's say. We don't like to talk about failure, but it's important when we speak to investors.
So I'm curious to know, how did you come to choose the name? I'm curious about the methodology, because you're black and white, as you say, completely different. And what stands behind ENVI, the name ENVI Lodges?
So we had lots and lots of brainstorming sessions. We had, of course, a big list of names where each one of us, wrote the names that came to mind. We ran them through our friends and family, and then we reached two names. If you want to know what the other one is,
Of course.
I know.
Let's say don't give ideas.
So it was between this and another one, both of which Chris came up with, and I actually liked them both. But then we decided on ENVI because it has a deeper meaning than the other one. It's actually the first four letters of environment.
Wow.
And we thought that environment does not mean only nature. It includes the people that are living in this environment. It includes heritage, it includes culture. So the name actually brings together all of these elements and all of these values which we want ENVI to be to stand up for.
Well, it's interesting because I love your explanation of the meaning behind envy, because for me the first thing that came to mind was like when you envy something, it's because you love it a lot. You say, wow, it's so uncomparable, it's beyond compare, and so you envy it so much. So I would imagine your product being uncomparable, beyond compare, because it's so. I envy that product. Well, actually, it's about all environment. What other core values are you guys putting into the company? Apart from obviously responsibility, environment, what else is at the core of ENVI Lodges?
The envy with the Y that you mentioned came after, as we realized that it could also mean this to some people.
Wow.
Although it's part of the seven sins, and some religions is also not necessarily a positive thing to have envy. But obviously we all say, and let's be a little bit human about it. We all say, oh, you went to this amazing lodge in the Swiss Alps or in Africa. I really envy you. I wish I could be there as well because it looks so amazing. So obviously people in the back of their mind would have that connotation as well. But it's definitely for us the environment, and part of the environment and the values that we want to bring in the company. The sustainability is an important part that can take forms of regeneration also. So it's not only about sustaining an environment, but also bringing it back to life. There is an important cultural element that Noelle was talking on, which is how to integrate the local culture in the product. And let's please stop just adding mashrabiyas in the Middle East to say that we're bringing local culture. I think this was overdone about 15 years ago. So the element of local culture has to do with how you work with local people, how you bring their craft into your experiences, how you bring their food, how do you employ them and train them to become your guides, how to invite local cooks to come and prepare special dishes on weekends, for instance. So the culture has to be embedded in the philosophy of the company, in your operating standards, in the guest journey that you create every time. This was an important part. The third pillar is there is a misconception about lodges, and part of the lodges for some people, they call it glamping, is that if I have a nice site and I put a tent or a bubble or a dome on it, then that's enough. People will come and will take a picture, put it on Instagram, and I'll be successful. Well, this has its limitation, because this person will come once, sit there, take a photo, and will say, what do I do now? What is it that I'm gonna experience and live that gonna want me to come back or stay for an extended period? So providing these transformational experiences for us are extremely important. And we're not talking about activities like let's do archery. It's not going to transform anything in your life. Transformation comes from changing a mindset, changing the perception about the culture, about contributing to the environment, about meeting locals, going to schools, taking that level of experiences to the next stage so that it becomes transformative is one of the core values of the company.
Right. Is there something or many things that ENVI Lodges will not compromise on?
Yes, a few. Number one, I think it's always making sure that you're doing your best in developing projects and operating projects that are sustainable. Now, obviously, this is a big topic, as I said, and in different markets and different climates, you can't really achieve the same levels all the time. And you have to be really realistic about what you can do in terms of sustainability. You have limitations by the climate, you have limitation by your funding, by the investor. You still have to provide certain comfort to your guests. Some small boutique brands in Asia do a fantastic job, and we really look up to them, even in Africa. But we're trying to operate in very different climates, be it the desert, the mountain. You know, North Africa is different from the GCC. The Mediterranean coast is different from the Omani coast, the Indian Ocean. So we're not geographically limited to a place where we can control everything. Even in the types of product offering that we do tents, we do alternative pods, we do the modular prefab units. They all require a different approach. But we have to make sure that whatever we do, our core standards of sustainability in design, technical services, and operations are actually maintained, because this is what we're all about. It's about providing responsible travel and responsible accommodation, and we have to walk the talk.
Noelle, in our one-to-one interview, when we went into a journey about yourself, you obviously show your planning skills, saying, even on my holiday, it's a spreadsheet, attention to detail. And I can see and I can feel the passion that both of you putting into, and the details that went into planning for launching ENVI Lodges. But we had an interesting chat. You said, but we need to be careful on the way, even we talk, the way we show ourselves, because there are challenges. What are the challenges in bringing to market such a unique concept, transformative concept?
Yeah, so it's a big challenge. As Chris said, there are things that we don't compromise on. And now at such an early stage of creating a brand, when you don't have a project to showcase, it becomes very challenging to decide on what to show, especially online. Because the digital world can reach millions. One post can go viral. And if this post has the wrong message or the wrong picture or the wrong small item that shows in the background of a photo, it's a problem. And this is why Chris and I, even though we have people who are experts and helping us with our digital marketing, with what we post on our social media platform, we're heavily involved on a day-to-day basis to see what photo is being posted, what message is being in the caption. I give you an example. We had a photo that really looked beautiful of a very authentic, spice shop in a market. We all said okay, and then one person realized that there's a gun somewhere in the photo in a corner of the photo, a shooting gun.
Yeah.
And this is totally against ENVI values.
Wow.
So we have to take the picture down. So it's a challenge until we're more comfortable with what we can show, because we'll be showing what we are and what we have in terms of product, in terms of projects. But until then, we have to really be careful on our selection, especially that given that we are one of the first few who have created this brand from this region, there aren't many projects that we can reference or we can take images from. And it doesn't really make sense to bring, to showcase other regions for this region, given that it's a completely different environment. It doesn't make sense to show a tropical environment with giraffes and elephants. So it has to be relevant, but it has to be very carefully selected.
So, do you know, there is also a lot of people out there that envy what you do. So the easiest way to knock down people is asking the typical tough questions. What you bring to the table, why is envy different? What's the differentiation of envy? You know, I mean, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate, you know, the ignorance that sometimes you find out there. So, why is envy different?
What our industry needs to do is find gaps in market where a certain offering is underserved or not served at all, or where existing players are not paying particular attention to it because their structure doesn't allow them to look at 20 keys, 30 keys in the middle of a forest or in the middle of the desert. But this is what people actually want. I had great talks with my friends within the industry that develop these massive hotels. And when they receive an opportunity for 20, 30 keys, a tented camp, let's say, or an eco farm, they tell me, Chris, if we take it, we're going to destroy this land. We're going to destroy this development. We're going to overbuild it. And this is not what this land needs. This is not what this owner needs. I think you should talk to them. And what we're doing is really filling a gap in the market and getting inspired by great success that happened around the world in Costa Rica and Southern Africa and in Asia, and say, look, this region also needs these experiences. The market is ready for it, and we want to be the first to offer it.
Can there be ENVI Lodges without nature?
I think there's nature everywhere. Desert is nature. Desert has an ecosystem. It has insects. It has, although I'm scared of them, but it has snakes. It has bushes. Anywhere is, of course, not a concrete jungle, and we cannot be in a concrete jungle in an urban environment. But apart from that, anything that is remote and immersed in its raw and natural environment, yes, there can definitely be an envy there.
And we're currently really looking at some amazing projects. We have about 12 projects in the pipeline under discussion, and they vary from mangroves in different parts of the world, mountains, forests, deserts, and farm. And we're looking at all of them at the same time. And this just is so exciting for us because we will hopefully be able to showcase ENVI quite rapidly in very different natural environments with very different experiences, to be able to show to investors and to the market that this is everything that is possible in this country or this region. Once you've seen the concrete jungle that the city has to offer, it's time to go to the real jungle.
Right. Before, when we had coffee, your phones didn't stop ringing, your emails coming out, the opportunity are flooding in. How do you select which one to choose? I'm curious because, I mean, how do you, what methodology you both entertain to say, okay, that's the one?
We started preparing the leads in the pipeline before we launched in September. So we've been working on it for some time, and we're happy with what we're preparing to hopefully announce. But since the launch, it's just been overwhelming. It's as if people discovered and investors discovered that there is an alternative to traditional construction. Although we're not the first. In the UAE, there are a few projects that would be, retreats or camps or lodges. But coming with a new brand at the brand level, giving them this opportunity, I think really excites them. And we've been blessed with a large number of requests. We have many projects under discussion in the pipeline, and it's very difficult to focus on all of them. We're a small team. We need to set the priorities. We need to look at the markets that we know the most, where we're the most comfortable launching, because we want to launch with the best possible project and obviously a great reputation, having a great start. We've been approached for Costa Rica, we've been approached for South Africa, and we've been approached for Southeast Asia. But we're saying, look, before we run, we need to walk. So we're putting priorities on the 3-4 hot markets that we have in the MENA region at the moment. The UAE and Saudi are obviously very important. We're looking also at Egypt, which is booming on all fronts in terms of tourism. We have an opportunity in Morocco. We have one in Turkey. We're looking at Bahrain as well. And recently a couple in sub-Saharan Africa. But obviously we're taking those baby steps.
Yeah. Should
Please.
I answer?
Of
The
course,
previous
of course.
You asked an important question as to how do we look at a site. Of course, the geographical, decision comes into play. But when we decide on a site, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's not about throwing 3 tents or 10 tents or whatever, 20 bubbles and waiting for the people to come. We follow a different process, which is experience-led. We look at the site, what is there, what can the guest see, what can the guest experience, what can the guest feel, smell, hear, who can the guest interact with, and we plot this guest journey. And this guest journey has to last for as long as the length of stay is. Let's say if we're planning for a 3-4 days length of stay, the maximum, we plan for it. And then as part of this journey, there's the accommodation element. This is when we come to the decision of what best suits the site in terms of accommodation type. But it goes back again to building the entire guest journey, building this transformative experience that the guest is there for. And this is how we decide on what site is better than the other.
What skills a potential employee need to have to come and work for you?
That's a great question. We actually we discussed the culture of the company that we want to build, and the values and believing in the purpose is a number one priority. Believing in what we're doing and doing it genuinely from the heart, not because it looks nice on a CV or maybe it is a stepping stone, but believing in the message that ENVI wants to deliver to the industry, believing in the value that we're creating for these local communities, for the staff, for the owner, for the environment. This is what comes as priority. And then of course we need the skills, because you need to surround yourself with people who tell you what to do, and not the other way around. They are the experts in their own fields, and they should bring that to the table as well.
What is the big dream? Do you guys have a big dream for ENVI Lodges? What's the ultimate, say, wow, we achieve our dream? What is it?
For me, it's really all about creating a brand and being known for having created a brand that did have a positive impact on the industry, on the environment, on the investors, that we actually did something different. I've always been attracted by different things that are very niche and specialized. And this is for me really the future of tourism, of leisure tourism. And in 10, 15, 20 years, seeing ENVI Lodges in different continents, in different markets, operating successfully, I would look back at my career and say, I did what I had to do, I'm very proud of it, and that's it.
Noelle?
For me, it's also similar. Continuity is what success is to me. And for the ENVI engine to run on its own eventually, and not need, of course we're going to be involved, but I would like it to become an independent engine that keeps on growing around the world on its own and remaining, existing, let's say.
Is ENVI Lodges for everybody?
That's a great question, and we've actually debated that internally. We've asked ourselves, who's our perfect guest? Who's our target market? Is it an age bracket? Is it the millennials? Is it the Gen Z? Who are these people who would be interested? And what we realized is that It's not about age, it's not about generation, although it was maybe driven by the millennials and the Gen Z, but now it's different. It's about mindset. You can either be in an adventurous mindset, you can either be in a spiritual mindset or in an explorer mindset when you travel. And each one of our ENVI lodges will be focusing on this target mindset. And it could be you, the same person, who on one trip you're in a mindset, and on another trip, if you're traveling with family, you want to be the explorer. If you're traveling with your wife, you want to be the spiritual, to go and detox, to have a wellness experience per se. So this is who ENVI speaks to, let's say. These are the three types of guests that ENVI appeals to, and it could be anyone who falls within these mindsets.
There is also obviously a purchasing power consideration that you have to take. Historically, experiential lodges have been popular with people with means. People are willing to pay $1,000, $2,000 per person a night. Forget about the ADR, really it's a per person per night. And go discover the Big Five in Africa, or do an amazing experience in the Nordic countries, or in Antarctica, whatever you want to go that is extreme and wild. There is a glamping product that has been developed for a lower entry type of ticket that we're seeing a lot popping up in Europe, for instance, which is a $100 to $200 a night type of experience. Each market can create different experiences, have different positionings. There is an opportunity to create lodges for everyone, really. But for us, to be able to create transformative experiences and have a meaningful impact on environment and what we do, we have to develop a certain product that is deemed luxury. That in some instances can cost you $400 or $500 a night, but in other instances can be over $1,000 a night. Because if you want to travel responsibly and have a positive experience that is transformative, there is a big investment that comes into place into the lodge. There is a certain service that needs to be provided, and this all has a cost. Hence, ENVI targets three positionings. We classify our lodges according to rings, which are the rings of a tree. So when you cut the tree, you see the rings, and this tells you the age of a tree. So we use those rings, and we have single ring lodges, double ring lodges, and triple ring lodges that vary from within the luxury space, from the more raw experience to the most pampered and exclusive experience. At the moment, we're seeing a lot of appetite for the double ring from investors. In some market, they really like the ultra luxury type of product, but I think the market slowly will start shifting also in this region into the single ring, because there is a huge market that can't afford these crazy prices.
So there is a lot of people. We're coming to an end of, unfortunately, our talk. That is, for me, it's been a transformative experience talking to you. So I can't wait to get into the first ENVI Lodges, hopefully for free. It's expensive lodges, they are super cool. But if I would say to you, obviously, we have big audiences out there, and starting the sentence, whether it's an investor, whether it's your future customer or your future employee, I promise. How you will finish the sentence?
I promise that ENVI Lodges will never be selling sleep. We will only provide transformational experiences that offer regenerative value to the environment where we're in.
Chris?
She's too good, and that's why she's my business partner. I can't beat that. I'll have to pass on that. No, I promise that we will provide you with lodges that offer really unique experiences while still being very responsible in the way they have been built and operated, to make sure that the local communities embrace you, because you can't be successful in these villages, in these farms, in these remote locations, if the local community is not part of your story. And we're working currently on some projects where there are talks to give X% of a project to the locals, so they can be part owners in this. And I think this is a great satisfaction for us, and it's a great story to have.
Well, I'm afraid I have to say it is the end, but Chris, Noelle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
True experience.
Thank you so much, Filippo.
Thank you.